Hello. It's your girl, Jeray Campbell, coming to you live on this October the 3rd. Welcome to hello, everyone. As you come on in, thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to this week's edition of Worth It Wednesdays. Worth It Wednesdays. And I'm here today to talk about living your best life after a loss. Oh, goodness. I'm going to give people a few more seconds to come in and join and watch. But I want all of you, as you come in and as I begin to speak, remember to throw some likes, throw some hearts, and also talk about how you were able to cope after a loss. Okay, I would love to see you all just share these messages, because I do pray that this goes around to folks that that will be able to take some of your advice, because there's no better advice than getting it from somebody who's actually been through what you have gone through or are still trying to go through. Okay, so give me a thumbs up if you agree. And as always, if you feel like this topic is something that is worth sharing, go ahead and click that share button. And for those who are new, please shout out your city. I want to know where you are watching from. All right. So, dealing with a loss. I wasn't specific in the title because you can lose. A loss can be detrimental, even if you lose a pet. And of course, a family member, close family member, a friend, a coworker, whatever it is, you or whoever it is, you will have to go through a grieving process. Some of us have lost our hair, right? Some of the women experience that, or even men rather, right? Would y'all agree, men, that, when you lose your hair, it's a grieving process? It's like, man, and don't have me call some of y'all out, because y'all that I don't want to let go stage, and you just keep letting that barber bring that tape line further back and further back, and eventually you're like, man, let me just go on and let this thing go. Ooh, it's hard. You try to do everything to keep that hairline, but you got to let it go. So that's what we're going to talk about, these things that nobody really wants to open up about, but it's really needed and it's necessary for your complete healing and for you to live your best life, because that's what your loved one will want you to do, right? So first things, a little bit of housekeeping stuff. I want to talk about just some if I lose somebody close to my life, etiquette, right? So here's some of the things. Hey, boo. Hey, Janice. Hey. All right, Lexington, South Carolina, checking in. All right, but I want to talk about some of those things that really get on y'all's nerves. Put it in the comments right now. You've lost somebody close to you, and people, they mean very well, don't they? Don't they mean well? Lord knows they do. They mean well, and they try so hard to make you feel better. But I made a little list of some of those things that people do that does kind of try, get on your nerves. So first thing is, they hear about the news and they're like, well, what happened? How did they die? Now, come on, that's, you just in shock, as much shock as they're in. So that's something you really might not want to talk about. The person that's grieving may not really want to talk about that right now. So it's kind of like, as the person on the outside, you don't really know when to introduce that question, but then you're kind of like, I don't know what else to say. So avoid that question. That's number one. Number two is those cliche phrases and scriptures. Come on, do y'all agree? Now, when you are going through, maybe I'm speaking for myself, I don't know, it might be just me, but sometimes the last thing you want to hear is, all right, keep your head up, stay strong. The Lord won't put no more on you than you can bear. Stuff like that. You mean well, but it's like, man, look, all I want to do is crawl into my little hole, do absolutely nothing, and cry for about 3, 4, 5 months. I really don't want to hear that. I'm not saying don't say those things, guys, but just don't get upset if the person you're saying that to doesn't receive it well. All right, next thing is, personally, this gets on my nerves. It might not get on everybody else's nerves, but after there's a loss, everybody got to come to the house. They call it setting up here in the South. I think, is it setting up? Did I get it right? I'm not sure. But they stay at your house, but they don't know when to leave, right? It's kind of like you got to put some hours on the door. Like, okay, when I go to bed, that might be y'all's cue to, get on out. And don't be looking all through my albums and stealing my pictures, right? All right. So next is stopping a person from grieving. That's a big one. A lot of times, especially for the people that haven't really experienced that type of loss that you may have experienced, will find themselves like, oh man, don't cry, don't do this, that's, kind of like one of the things that you really have to go through. So try not to tell a person, don't cry, don't do this, because you're human. You're going to cry. If my dog mourned my son being away for a week, then you have a right to mourn as well. Take your time mourning, but we're going to get to that. And the last thing that I put in the list was during the ceremony. One thing I know that gets on the family's nerves, sometimes not everybody's family, but guys, try to respect that 2-minute rule. We know Auntie made the best pound cake. And it's kind of like, okay, the last 4 people said that. And, here you are saying the same thing. And, kind of try to go up there with the, some words of comfort, or like a, story that don't have to do with Auntie's pound cake. That's just some couple of little things. And then also, too, another one is just listen. I had a friend that lost her mom, and she, didn't necessarily direct it at me, but she said, look, there's nothing really that you can do at this time to make me feel better. And so when I'm talking, I'm not really wanting, any advice. I really just want you to listen. I'm just really just kind of pouring out my heart, sharing what I'm feeling. I'm kind of sharing what I'm feeling. And so I really, kind of just want you to listen. Don't get concerned, but just listen to what I'm saying. So those are a few of those tips. So if you watch this in the rebroadcast, I need you to follow those tips. And guys, if you feel like this message reaches somebody or needs to go to somebody, especially that person that want to speak at everybody's service, go ahead and share that with them. All right. So next, for the person who is grieving, it is very important that while you're going through your process, understand that it is definitely a process. Don't expect yourself to reach a certain point by a deadline, none of that stuff. You're going to have amazing days where you feel great, and you're going to have days where you just don't want to do nothing. But unfortunately, if, for those of us that have to work for a living, we have to go back to work. And what is a week off that the people give you? Hey, Carolyn, how you doing? Good to see you, girl. On the book. Good to see you on the book. But it's hard to get back into your life. But, you got to find a way to continue to live, because your loved one, the last thing they want you to do is give up, right? They don't want you to give up. So pick yourself up and go on to work, do your couple of hours, and then go back home to your grieving process. Number 2, focus on the good times that you had with that person. That's really a big thing. I know you're going to miss that individual, but you got to focus on those good times, the lessons, the conversations you may have had, whatever it is. So that way you can kind of cheer up and you can realize just how blessed you were to have someone like that in your life. Because believe me, a lot of people they can't say that they had a father like yours. They cannot say that they had a mother like yours. They can't say they had a sister or brother or a cousin or an auntie or uncle like yours. So you are blessed. You have to stand on those blessings, stand on God's word, and understand how blessed you are to have that person in your life. Hopefully it's a person of positive influence, obviously, but you were blessed to have that individual in your life. Now, a big thing is basically creating new traditions. Is really tough to do. But you know how, when grandmama was here, we all got together. We all, went to her house. We had the best cookouts, the best holidays. And now she's not here anymore. So it's like, what are we going to do now? What you need to do is create a new tradition. Somebody can create their new tradition. That is what we did when that person was here with us. And now we're going to do this now. You must create something new. You must create that new tradition. Next, this is kind of almost self-explanatory, but whatever you do, try to use natural ways to cope. Don't depend on substances, drugs, alcohol, because not for the reason that we don't want you to be, under the influence, but because what you're doing is prolonging your healing process. That's all you're doing. I know you may have a hard time sleeping. I know you may have a hard time focusing and thinking, and that's the last thing you want to think about. That's the image you want to get out of your head. But the more you put things in your body to suppress that feeling, the longer it's going to take for those images to come out of your head. So it's kind of like I said last Wednesday when I referenced if you didn't watch the video, I referenced a horror movie that I watched. And in the horror movie, they had to go down this dark road and scary road in order to defeat the enemy. We're just going to call it the enemy. And right now, the enemy in your life, if you're grieving, is that grief. Because the grief, prolonged grief for too long or lost hope is an enemy. And it will affect you more internally than anything. So when you suppress all of that energy, you might look good on the outside, but I promise you, it's hurting you on the inside. It is hurting you. So try not to suppress that, suppress yourself with drugs or alcohol, and also suppressing yourself with, overly happy. That's another way, kind of keeping yourself busy, acting like everything's okay. Oh, everything's fine. I'm gonna just go on to work. I'm good. But eventually it's going to catch up with you. Go on down that dark road. Go on down it, because it's a part of your healing process. All right. So last week I talked about Psalms 1 verses 1 through 3, and I referenced the tree. The tree will be planted by running waters, or you are like a tree planted by running waters, right? So imagine yourself being this tree. Once again, if you know anything about gardening or trees, you may know, okay, around the fall time, they start to lose their leaves, correct? So during that time, that's where you are in your grieving process. You are losing your strength, and therefore, your leaves are falling. You look lifeless. But guess what? Just like that tree, if you let all those little leaves fall off, if you let everything go through its process, by the time spring comes, you will be a beautiful tree again, and you'll be able to grow back all of the leaves that you had before and a few more branches or two, right? However, I recently learned one thing about a tree is that if you try to cut that tree down or prune the tree, so to speak, during the spring, then you're going to hurt the life of that tree. So I'm going to use that example to reference, you thought you were all the way healed. You thought you let go of some things, but now it's kind of like you're spending more energy in the springtime trying to heal that piece that you did not kind of let fall off during your grieving phase. So that's why it's important to go completely through that grieving process. Lock yourself up in a room, kick, holler, and scream. A lot of people experience that anger at God. You question why, right? Why did my husband, my wife, my daughter, my son, my mother, my father, why did they have to leave me so soon? They were everything that I had. But it's kind of like you telling God, like, well, Lord, I guess it's just me and you. And God's like, wait a minute, what you mean by that? Just me and you? You on the joy being with me? What you mean by that? But it's fine. It's okay. And you can get through it. You can get through it. And I want to see you get through it. I want to see you live your best life. All right. So here's another, a new verse I'm going to share with you all. So we're going to do Proverbs 4:23 through 27. And it reads, 23 to 27. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Avoid all perverse talk. Stay away from corrupt speech. Look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. Mark out a straight path for your feet and stay on a safe path. Don't get sidetracked and keep your feet from following evil. What I've read is some additional tips on what you should try to do to get over this. Not get over it, but cope and to get back to living your best life. So number one, you got to guard your heart. Got to guard your heart. Don't let everybody come into your heart with, kind of keeping you down. If today is not a good day, you're not trying to be sad today, then shut it off. Say, you know what? I'm okay today. Yes. Thank you for your concern, and keep it moving. Guard your heart because it's going to determine the course of your life. Avoid all perverse talk. Stay away from corrupt speech. So all those people that come around being negative, come on, give me them likes. I'm going to be real with you all because I've seen it and I've heard it. When you're at the house, you're grieving. Of course, if it's not a loss that occurred in your own house, but you overhear people talking about the deceased or about the spouse or the children. They're being, completely negative. Just remove yourself from that. And I wouldn't even respond to it because they're just going to get you all upset and you might end up in jail. All right. So we don't want you to do all of that. So next part, look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. So the goal, number one, is to live your best life, right? So you got to look forward to living your best life. Keep your eyes focused on that. Some ways of keeping your eyes on the straight path on what lies before you. A lot of times you can join a support group. Like I said earlier, support group are those people who have gone through the same thing. For instance, you had the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. That was formed by a group of mothers who lost their child due to drunk driving. So not only do they learn how to cope and they all support each other, but they go around giving education on ways to avoid such a tragedy and they want people to not drive drunk. So that's a kind of a way where you can live your best life, and now your life has more of a purpose after this loss. So next is mark out a straight path for your feet and stay on the safe path. So kind of like what I just said. So you got your goal, but then you got to make a path towards that goal. Don't just say, I'm going to live my best life. You got to put some actions to that. The way I'm going to live my best life is by et cetera, or not et cetera, but I'm going to live my best life by doing blank. And you stick to that. Next is don't get sidetracked. Keep your feet from following evil. Now, you know, anytime you try to do something good, somebody's going to come along. They're going to get you off focus. And before you know it, they're going to bring you back on to that grieving stage. Recognize it and stay far away from it. In the scripture, they call it evil, but if you've already gone through those stages of, the denial, the anger, the hurt, the pain, all of that stuff, and you kind of feel yourself slipping back after being around certain folks, then you cut that relationship short. All right. So that is what I have for tonight, but I want to see who I have on tonight. I see we had Crystal checking in, Dwight, Richardson, Miss Carolyn. Good to see y'all. And of course, shout out where you are right now. Shout out your city. I know some folks, I know where you're from, but I want you to shout it out, okay? And also share real quick, just some things. If you had a loss, go ahead and go ahead and comment some ways that you found helpful to cope real quick. I remember I asked that question a while ago, and it was this summer, and I actually took a copy of something that a person inboxed me. And so, I'll just paraphrase. What he said was, he lost his mom. His mom was his everything. They were extremely close, even while she was still here. He always said, I don't know what I would ever do if I ever lost my mom. And not only did he lose his mother prematurely, but he was incarcerated when he lost her. So how awful is that? You have to hear about your mom's loss. Your mom leaving this place, but you're not even allowed to go see her for yourself. Due to technology, I'm sure, he might have been able to see her a photo or whatever, but man, I'm sure there's nothing like, physically being there and getting that closure for yourself. But he said it was through those support systems of being around people who experience the same thing. And of course, that relationship with God. Guys, that relationship with God is so important. You have to. And as I said in the last video, don't just read the scriptures. You got to kind of put yourself in the scripture. Just like the scripture I read today, guard your heart. You don't, instead of you said, Jeray guard Jeray's heart, and you'll basically put yourself into that scripture. So that way you can do that. So Delia my first name is Delia, Jeray. Jeray will avoid all perverse talk. Jeray will stay away from corrupt speech. Jeray will look straight ahead and fix her eyes on what lies before her. When you pray, when you meditate, when you memorize these scriptures, that is what you're going to tell yourself. You're going to put yourself into it. So I was talking, but I see nobody is posting any questions or any ways that they cope, but it's fine. That's all right. I hope that somebody got something out of this. And I will see you all next week. And who's still on with me? I see I got one person still on. I don't know who. But thank you again for watching. A lot of my topics are going to get towards something a little more entertaining, but I do feel like it's very, very important. Before you go forward in life, you got to talk about those things that really kind of keep you back from living your best life. And last week we talked about sexual assault or sexual abuse. And then today we're talking about losses. All right, guys, thank you so much. And you have a wonderful, wonderful night. Thanks.